Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans podcast starts right now.
All right, time now for a very special radio roundtable as we get you ready for the NBA Draft Lottery. Here to explain everything is none other than NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. Actually, he's too busy, so Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans.com, will get a chance to explain it to us. John DeShazier, Todd Graffagnini, the voices of the radio network for the Pelicans, will give their takes in and all. But, Jim, let's just kind of start with that overall aspect of it. Why the lottery? What's the lottery, and what does it mean to the Pels?
The lottery is for the 14 teams that did not make the playoffs. There's going to be some details that make it a lot more complicated than that this year with some of the trades that have happened, some of the teams that have protected picks. Maybe we'll get into that later. Don't have enough time to do that right now before we get into the roundtable. But Pelicans, to make a long story short, they have a 12.5% chance of winning the lottery. This is actually the highest pre-lottery slot that they've had since they were also fourth in 2012. So it's been a while that they've gone into the lottery with this kind of chance to actually be a winner, even though they did win it in 2019 as well with only 6% chance to win. They also have about a 48% chance of finishing in the top four. And just as a reminder, that's the only thing that's really determined at the lottery is the first four picks. After that, 5 through 14 are based on reverse order of record from the previous regular season. So that's what the Pelicans are looking at. They've got a roughly half and half chance of finishing in the top four. They actually could pick anywhere from 1 through 8 in any of those 8 spots. So hopefully a worst case scenario doesn't happen where they drop all the way down to 8th. There's only a 2.2% chance of that happening. But Monday night, 6 p.m. Central, that is the lottery. That's what we're going to be looking forward to, one of the biggest nights of the offseason.
All right, Todd and JD, that's a lot of math for me. I'll just wait to see the team logos on those envelopes. But, Todd, we have seen the Pelicans logo, Hornets logo, pop up twice before in franchise history. Zion Williamson, Anthony Davis. So, to start with you, sir, what would winning the lottery or finishing even in the top 4 mean for this team, a team that you saw up and close and personal?
Well, a couple things, Gus. I mean, obviously, getting a top 4 pick would kind of inject some life into the franchise, after the tough year, 21 wins. You get some people that are going to get excited about the possibility of getting a good player, whoever it may be. The other thing is, depending on what Joe Dumars and company want to do, other than the number 1 pick, who I think is a consensus right now, and everybody knows who that is, they might want to get rid of the pick and maybe acquire some other assets. Maybe that's what their game plan is. So, that's a little tougher to do when you're 6 or above, but when you're in the top 4, especially maybe 2 through 4, you're going to have some opportunities or some options as a franchise to maybe say, look, we don't like maybe 2, 3, or 4, whoever that may be, and maybe try to trade back, acquire some other assets, and try to help yourself down the road. So I think it's important to get that top 4 in a couple of different ways.
Yeah, I can't say it much better than that. I think obviously it means hope after that kind of season. You inject the new life, as Graf just said, and that's what we're looking for. Some kind of adrenaline jolt. You had kind of one adrenaline jolt in Joe Dumars being hired as president of basketball ops. That's not sexy, okay? It's not. What is sexy is the infusion of talent on the court, where you get a player who can add into this mix that you have. And look, I don't necessarily, as Graf said, unless it's the number 1 overall pick, I will say this team has shown the ability to develop its draft picks. Yves Missi, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. It has shown the ability to develop its draft picks, and we're still along the lines with Jordan Hawkins. We'll see how that goes. But it has shown that it can find a guy who fits what they do and work that guy in. So hopefully, worst case scenario, you figure they'll be able to do that. Best case scenario, you get the guy that you really, really want, and you get that jolt of adrenaline.
I think finishing in the top 4 to me would also soothe kind of some of the pain that we experienced from the season. I feel like in the entire time we've been here, there haven't been that many extended stretches where the team's out of the race. So I thought what we went through in March and April was definitely difficult. So I would feel a little bit better about that some of the agony that we went through in the last few weeks of the season, that it was worth it, that you ended up with a pick in the top 4. And also, too, if you get the number 1 pick, number 2 pick, I think one of the impacts could be, too, that maybe it changes the entire perspective of what other moves you're going to make during the course of the offseason. So I think it would be very significant to finish in the top 4, but especially, obviously, number 1.
Well, I can't think of a more superstitious person in the world, literally, other than you. Maybe head coach Rick Jones from back in the day, Tulane baseball, Todd Graffagnini. So do you have any good luck charm, or do you... Well, will you not watch the television? Will you go take a walk? Will you blindfold yourself? Is there anything you're going to do to try to get the best possible outcome scenario for the Pelicans?
No, I do not have any type of good luck charm or superstition. No, I am a game day type, routine oriented superstition type. I don't have any physical rabbit's foot or a 4-leaf clover or anything like that. That stuff doesn't work. It's only during the game. That's how I roll. That's how I've always rolled. It's called routine oriented. It's not superstition, Gus. Let's get it straight.
See, now that's the thing. I'm not superstitious. I'm not a little stitious. I'm no stitious. It doesn't. If I don't have any control over it, it doesn't really bother me. Now, do I want the team to get the number 1 pick? Of course I do. But, in terms of being on pins and needles, I'll watch it for the drama of seeing, where the team is going to draft, obviously, and we'll hope for the best. But, I'm not gonna double over in the fetal position if they don't get 1 or 2 overall, because again, I figure they'll be able to pick a good player who'll fit in, and it's not like I don't think the Pelicans need like reconstructive surgery. We're dependent a lot on ifs and health, but you're talking about some of the freakish injuries to Herb Jones and Trey Murphy and DeJounte Murray, and you look at the possibilities of getting those guys back, and then you don't feel like you have to have Cooper Flagg, although that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? But you don't feel like you just have to get the guy. You feel like you can make do with the guys you have, and if those guys are playing to their capabilities and get reasonable health, and I just say reasonable health, I don't even say good health now, just reasonable health, that they'll be a pretty good team.
Yeah, I want to echo a lot of what JD talked about too, in terms of, it's important. It would be amazing for the Pelicans to have a number 1 pick, but there's no way that you can go into this saying like your day is going to be ruined if they don't win the lottery, or if they don't finish top 2 or 3. I talked to a lot of people throughout the season who said, talking about different teams like Utah or Washington, their plan is going to be to get the number 1 pick and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, 14% is not a plan, which is the odds that you have to win. Even if you could go 0-82 in the regular season and you still only have a 14% chance. So that's why I say, like, that's not a plan. That's a hope. That's a dream.
Hope is not a plan.
Right. And then in terms of the superstition part of it, along the same lines, I think, of what both of you guys said, I'm operating by the philosophy that, what worked for me in 2012 and in 2019? Doing absolutely nothing. So I'm going to stick with that philosophy and that strategy. I have no superstition. I have no trinket. I have no lucky charm. And it worked before, so maybe it'll work again for a third time in the last 15 years or so.
I forgot about it. I was outside playing with the kid. Actually, I was waiting for Air Force One to fly over. You know me, Todd. I love my planes. And there it goes. And then I hear from the inside somebody yelling. I think it was Anna. We won the lottery. So I ran inside and looked at what it was. So maybe I don't pay attention to it. I don't know.
You talking about 2019?
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
So I didn't really pay attention to that. All right, so I guess all of us will wait and see. Here's an interesting one. Based on records, right? Or I guess chances. Jazz, Wizards, Hornets, Pels, 76ers, Nets, Raptors, Spurs, Blazers, all within that area there. If the Pels don't win it, Todd, is there a team that you would or fans should root for to win? I think I can safely say you don't want the Jazz to win it.
Well, Gus, I mean, you're going to take all my answers. That's fine. But, yeah.
I was giving you the team.
Thank you. If it's not the Pelicans, then you would hope it'd be Washington or Charlotte or even Philly. You know, Washington and Charlotte, they pose no threat to the Pelicans or what the Pelicans are trying to do. Philly, I mean, I don't feel sorry for anybody, but you kind of feel sorry for them a little bit considering what happened to Embiid in the last couple of years. Again, I don't feel sorry for anybody, but it's been tough for them. Maybe they could use a jolt. But, yeah, Washington and Charlotte, and as far as the other side, the Utah Jazz absolutely, positively cannot, must not, will not, would not be allowed to win the lottery, even though it's not technically being allowed to win the lottery. But what they have done in the last couple of years, which is basically make the game a sham with what they have done as far as what they have, reported injury-wise and who has played and who has not played, for them to be rewarded with winning the lottery karma-wise would just be it'd be a crime in my estimation. And let me put it to you this way. They just extended their head coach, Will Hardy. He just got a contract extension after tanking the last 2 years. Now, you think they're tanking on purpose?
This is saying...
Of course they are.
This is saying thank you for putting up with the misery that we just put you through.
Perfectly, Coach Hardy. You have done everything we have asked you to do. How can you allow that team to win the lottery?
I believe we would call that the process 2.0 or something or some such.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind Charlotte or winning it or Philly winning it from a purely selfish standpoint of I want the Pelicans to get a point guard, and those two teams have point guards, and they don't need one. So from a selfish standpoint, those are the two picks. I'm totally in Graf's corner with Utah not winning it. But, those two teams I could live with winning the lottery because they don't need what the Pelicans need, I think. And so then they would therefore bypass the point guard, and that would give the Pels another opportunity, a better opportunity to get one that I think, I'm not in anybody's head over there, but I think they need one.
I also had Washington and Charlotte as the main teams that I'm going to root for. One of the notes about the Hornets that I thought was really unbelievable is they've made the playoffs 3 times out of the last 21 years, but during that entire span where they've been in the lottery 18 times, they've only won it once. And a lot of those years they've had bad records too where their percentage was really high. So I feel a little bit of sympathy towards them that I would like to see them win it. Personal note too, I also have a good friend who works for Charlotte who was furious with me in 2019 when the Pelicans won the lottery and the Hornets didn't. And also in 2012, when it was still the New Orleans Hornets, they got the number 1 pick, Anthony Davis. The Charlotte ended up second. They were the Bobcats and had Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. So I feel like there's a little bit of luck maybe that needs to go towards Charlotte. You guys mentioned Philly too. If they win the lottery, that means that OKC doesn't get a first-round pick. Philly's pick is only top 6 protected, so if it drops to OKC could end up with the 7th pick in this draft, which is unbelievable. So I guess if you don't want to see OKC end up with a pick, you could also root for Philly. I will say, though, I'm against Philly winning the lottery only because they've had so much success the last few years. It doesn't feel like they're a team that deserves a number 1 pick because, I mean, they've had a bunch of – maybe they haven't gotten past the second round famously, but they also have won a ton of regular season games in recent years.
I will say this, though, Jim and JD. If Charlotte does win, I mean, again, you know who they're going to pick, who, of course, goes to school just right down the road from Charlotte. Are we going to get into the frozen envelope, Patrick Ewing?
Of course. There's going to be some conspiracy.
If Charlotte does win, are we going to get into all that?
You realize, though, that I say this almost every year. There's 14 teams in the lottery. There's usually about 10 to 12 conspiracies that you could come up with before the lottery happens. So I feel like the frozen envelope conspiracy thing, there's almost always a way that you can say it for every team. So it doesn't really, I don't know how much stock you can really put in that when you can find a theory for just about every team that's involved in the lottery.
Well, the biggest theory is if they've been in the lottery 18 years out of the last 21, and Adam Silver wants them obviously to get the hometown boy to make up for some of that agony, as Jim just said. Jim said that a while ago. I can't think of a better word to fit last season. It got to be pretty agonizing at times.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Out of the first, 8 teams worst record-wise. 3 are in the Western Conference, so a lot of Eastern Conference teams, gentlemen, that are in there as well. Pels 4, double of the Pels would be the 8th spot. That's where the Spurs are. Imagine Wemby with... Yeah, exactly.
No.
So, yeah, you're giving me... So we don't even want to speak that into fruition there. But look, we will keep an eye on it and see what happens here. But I'm going to give you all a little bit more responsibility here in this podcast. Graf, JD, Jim. Going to make you the lottery czar. How about that? So, do you like the format? Do you not like the format? Would you make changes to the format? There have been a lot of different discussions about the lottery format. If you were to make a change, what would be the change?
I don't think I would have a change per se. I think the only thing, and again, I'm going into the who's winning and who is losing on purpose. I just think it's difficult to, give the flowers to a team that has not been trying their best, and that's where we are with the Jazz. But what I would say is the bottom 4 teams should be almost guaranteed to have top 4 picks. That to me would be the change. Like if you're the 4th worst team, like the Pelicans are, and you pick 8th, that's tough. Man.
You know what though?
That's tough.
You're gonna make the teams losing at the end of the season problem worse by doing it that way, though.
I'm with you, and that's why I don't think I'm
going
to have any type of real significant change.
Yeah.
Look, I watched this Magic moment 30 for 30 just a couple days ago, which was they had Shaq and Penny. Mm-hmm. The Magic got the number 1 pick 2 drafts in a row. They had the worst record one year. They got Shaq. Then they improved 25 games. They had 50 wins, but didn't make the playoffs. So they got into the lottery. They had 1 ping pong ball in the 65 ping pong balls in the hopper, and they won.
That was the cold one.
But again, they had the least amount of chance to win, but they won. So in that essence, that truly was a lottery. And they got Penny Hardaway. But so I don't think I would have any type of major changes per se. The only thing is you would hope there'd be some type of better guarantee that you'd get a really good pick if you were that bad.
See, I've seen some theories because I want it to be equitable. I don't want Utah to be rewarded for the mockery it made of the game. And I saw a theory that said, maybe the bottom, 4 or 8 teams or something, the last 15, 20 games, whoever has the best 1-loss record showing they're trying to win is the lottery winner.
Like just a cutoff date?
Yeah, and that way you don't have teams purposefully trying to lose and be rewarded for it. You're more rewarded, even though you're not a winning team that year, you're more rewarded for trying to win down the stretch. And so I don't know how that can be implemented. And I don't have any great ideas on it because I was like, look, just figure out a way to just go back and make it even across the board for all those teams. And that way, but then you have a team in the lottery who's, a 50-win team that wins the lottery that wasn't designed to win the lottery over an 18-win team. So I don't know of a good solution for it, but I know the NBA's got to figure out something because you cannot have teams do what Utah has done. You cannot. You spit on the integrity of the game, and it really is off-putting and unattractive and all those things when you're seeing teams not trying to compete.
And then you extend their coach.
Yeah. And which is the tell that, hey, we were trying to lose, you're safe, you're good to go. And in this game, isn't everything supposed to be about winning? That's the essence of it. As Bill Parcells famously said, you are what your record says you are. Well, obviously, Will Hardy isn't what his record says he is because his team extended him, gave him more years and more money for having the kinds of seasons that they've had a couple of years. And that's an awful, awful look for the league.
Real quickly before we get to Jim's format change or just thoughts on it, and I wanted to ask you because you cover the Saints as well. Why does it work in the NFL then? Because I listen to, I go back to the final week this past season of the regular season, Saints at Tampa. They led at halftime. They were trying to win that game. You can see it. They were competitive towards the end of the season there. So why is the NFL work? I know they changed it by making it divisional
but the
games
NFL kind of has a little soft tank too. I mean, it's not you don't have everybody like really, really, really trying. And I'm not saying the Saints were one of those teams, but the Saints were 5-12 last year, and they were working with backup quarterbacks at the time. But I've seen situations where I remember a couple of years ago, Tampa Bay, and I don't know if it was before Jameis was drafted or what, but they were leading the Saints at halftime in Tampa and pulled their players, pulled all the starters, pulled them and said, we don't want to win this game, basically. And so you can see that in the NFL. It can happen in the NFL. It just looks different.
Okay.
Yeah, I've started to have that debate with some football people too who say to me there's no tanking in the NFL. And as you mentioned in the example that you came up with, I definitely think it's starting to creep into the NFL. I mean, there was a team that was fined heavily a couple of years ago because of I can't remember the specific details with Miami, but there was something like they publicly more or less admitted that they were losing games.
Yeah, the allegation was that the owner told the head coach to throw some games. And look, last year the Giants, we gonna say the Giants were trying to win?
Yeah.
The Giants did not look like a franchise that was trying to win.
I mean, the fact that it's starting to seep in the NFL is a bad idea. It's a bad thing. I mean, it just has such a kind of a deteriorating effect on a league and a sport, and just I don't know, at the end of the season, it just makes things so much worse and so much less interesting to watch. To go back to a couple, before I get into my commissioner for a day ideas, to go back to a couple things that you said, JD, too. I think one of the things that's the most disturbing about what Utah's done recently and what Philadelphia did during the process is that it's a multi-year thing. I think it's not great if a team does it once. It's still bad for the league, and I think it's something that if the NBA can root this out would be great. But the fact that Utah, it seems like they've had 3 years in a row where they either were competitive for the first couple months and then we're just like, now we're good. Let's just not be competitive. Or this season where, I mean, they were sitting guys in December and January for rest on non-back-to-backs. That's the part of it that was so alarming to me.
I'm not trying to cut you off, Jim.
No,
but
you're good.
Oklahoma City did it too. Yeah. They just finished.
Right.
Why do you think Oklahoma City's so good right now?
Yeah.
And all the first-round picks and getting Chet home, they did the same thing too. People forget that. They lost for 3 years.
Right.
For 3 years to get to where they are right now.
And unless you, I mean, if you're the league, how do you regulate that? How do you manage it? Because if you're not boots on the ground and the franchise headquarters, how do you say that guy isn't hurt? He should be playing.
Right.
How do you say, you know what? Well, Walker Kessler shouldn't be shooting threes. You know, how do you know? I mean, how do you regulate it?
Yeah, and I think from the comments that the league has made about it, they've said the same thing that you just mentioned. It's just like impossible from the outside looking in to legislate this. They don't want to get into playing time decisions. They don't want to get into injuries with certain guys and certain teams. So that is the difficult part about it. But I mean, I think that kind of leads me to, I have two separate ideas that I think could help fix this, or at least help the situation a little bit. The first one is The Athletic had an article a few weeks ago where they said, they floated the idea that I really like and I think is interesting, that if you finish with the worst record in the league, you can't pick number one. They said if you finish with the worst record, you automatically end up with the fourth pick. And what that would do, obviously, it would make it so you're not rewarded for being the worst team in the league, but it also would make it so that teams would, at the bottom of the standings, would try everything they could to not be the worst team. So all of a sudden, instead of having teams like Utah and Washington that went down to the last day of this past regular season where they had the same number of wins,
That's interesting.
and everybody was like, oh, the Wizards won the last game. I can't believe it. They lost a chance to be the number one spot. Instead, you would have those teams in that situation trying to win so they didn't have the worst record. So I really like that idea. I think there's a lot of potential to that because the race to the bottom wouldn't be possible because teams would say we can't finish number one because there's a guy coming out in the draft that we really like, and we know if we finish with the worst record, we have no chance to get him. So I like that idea. And the other thing, I think JD referenced this a little bit, but kind of just fleshing this out a little bit more, I think the downside of having equal odds for everyone in the lottery is what JD said, where you could have a team that just misses the playoffs and ends up with the number one pick, and everyone across the the league screams bloody murder because this team that doesn't deserve to pick number 1 has the pick. But I think what's happened at the end of the regular season in the last few years, I think I'm way less concerned about that than I am making the end of the regular season more of a legitimate thing, and to not have all these situations where on April 5th there's 6 games in the league and 4 of them are a waste of your time because in 4 of the games there's a team that is playing guys that don't deserve to be in the NBA, et cetera, et cetera. So I would like to see equal odds for the lottery for all 14 teams, because I think that would solve so many things at the end of the season. It would completely take out the motivation to lose, because you would know going into the lottery that if you're in the lottery, you have exactly the same odds as the other 13 teams that are in it. It doesn't help you to lose a game at the end of the season at all, because it's not going to change your status. And so I think that's an idea and I think we've also seen too that whoever you want to blame for this, you want to blame analytics, you want to blame front offices that think that they're smarter than everybody. I feel like that's become a problem as well, is that some of the front offices have gotten to the point where it's like they just think that they're smarter than everyone. If you have any situation, and you guys can tell me if you agree with this or not, if you have a situation where it's the last day of the season and you tell a team, if you lose this game, you have a 14.1% chance. If you win it, you have a 13.9% chance. I feel like we've gotten to the point in the NBA, and it's kind of embarrassing to say this, where a lot of the teams are like, we want that 14.1. We want that 0.2 better increased chance. So the point being that as long as you have any incentive at all, to me, to reward teams that lose, you're going to see teams do it, even if it's the most minuscule thing. And I guess if you think about it too, in 2019, they flattened the odds to make it so that the worst teams in the league had less of a chance to win. It didn't really solve it, because as long as teams have any shred of a advantage with the way that they look at things and the way they look at analytics and the way that some of these teams are clearly willing and able to throw away the latter part of the season, they're going to do it. So to me, the only way that you can purely get to the point where it's like no team is motivated and no team is doing brash things to lose games the way that allegedly Utah did this season, the only way to fix that to me is to make it equal odds. So that I would be in favor of that, even if there is a downside of you're going to have teams that are winning a lot more games that still end up winning the lottery.
Well, you said a phrase there that caught my ear, as the writer Jim is. He said it doesn't help you to lose, which the flip side is it doesn't hurt you to win. Mm-hmm. You can win and it doesn't hurt you. I mean, you still can compete and still be in the lottery and still have the exact same odds. And I think something like that will level it out, because, again, you got to be able to regulate this, and maybe that's the only way to regulate this, is to get teams off their rear ends and say, look, it doesn't matter if you don't want to play your guys. Go ahead, because that team that's playing their guys that's going to win 47 has got just as good a chance of winning it as you do.
I also thought the league believed that, not to put words in other people's mouths, when they went from the worst team in the league has 25% chance to win the lottery the way it used to be to 14%, I think the league believed, okay, now that number has dropped so much, we're going to see a drastic change in teams losing at the end of the season, knowing that even if we have the worst record, we only have a 14% chance. But I don't think that's played out that way at all. I think you still are seeing teams, as I referenced earlier, people coming up to me and being like, oh, Utah's just going to win the lottery, or Washington's going to win the lottery. So even if it's 14%, which is, like we were saying, is not a plan, you still see teams that are so motivated to end up with that 14% regardless.
I think it's an interesting point, both of you guys bring it up, JD and Jim, in that I do love the competitive nature of it. Ty, what if there's the deadline says, all right, with 6 games left, best record of those 6 in that order, right? So it gives you incentive to try to win games. Because we even saw with this team, the guys that were getting minutes on the court, they had effort there, right? They were trying to do that. And I like what Jim is saying. Hey, I'm gonna not make it complicated here. You finish with the worst record, you're not getting the top seed. So it's up to y'all to try to make that happen. I kind of like that aspect of it too, because when you look at it, at the end of the day, it's about competitiveness, and maybe I wouldn't know if precedent is the word that I would use, but the in-season tournament that the league has, right? It's only a handful of games, not even 6, right? It's like 3 or 4, something like that you look at it, and you are doing win-loss record. So you don't really need that many games, but you do sort of competitive nature on it. So maybe the cutoff is final 5 games of the year. Best record gets the top spot. So, all your top 4, cut off right there. Boom. Top 4, top 6. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I think Jim's theory might work the best.
Thank you.
I was thinking about the athletic.
Try, John.
I was thinking about the athletic article, which is very intriguing. The problem I have with that is, what if you really are truly bad?
Too bad. That's the answer that I would give.
What if you really?
Too bad.
Okay, so the Pels have all the injuries that we had this year, and you just don't have the horses to win games, and you have the worst record.
I mean, my counter to that would be that if it's because of the injuries, you weren't the worst team in the league really, anyways. You know what I mean? But setting aside that specific example, I heard somebody talk to me about this who's more of a football guy than a basketball guy, and they made a really good point that I thought. They said, at this point, the NBA, the bottom teams don't deserve fairness. They don't deserve the equitable nature of the lottery, and I agree with that. If you have multiple occasions every year of egregious cases of some of what we talked about today, where it's teams that don't care and aren't trying, like, to me at that point you forfeit the ability to say, like, we need to be treated fairly. It's the reason the system was put in place was on the assumption that it works because everyone's motivated to try to win, and that the team that at the bottom purely is legitimately the worst team. But I don't even know. Can we really say that in the last few years that the team that has the worst record is really the quote unquote worst team? I think a lot of cases.
Well, you can't tell now.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So the system is broken because of that.
It's a naive system. You're working on the honor system. And when you're talking about professional sports, nobody's got that kind of honor. I mean, let's be real.
Every man for himself, baby.
I mean, let's be real.
I've got the ultimate solution, but it'll never happen. You go like Premier League and regulate the bottom 3 teams, and you send them to the G League.
Yeah.
That'll get you winning.
I have a feeling.
Get you winning.
I have a feeling the owners will not go for that one.
I know, but that's the solution.
I mean, I can live with gyms. I can live with flattening it out and everybody having the same odds, which I've suggested before. Or I can live with maybe not the final 5 games because that's a small sample size, but the last 10 games to make you hustle to the finish line.
Yeah,
to make you hustle to the finish line. I can live with that. I mean, because now you won't get those situations where you can look at the matchups and say, okay, we know this guy and this guy and this guy ain't gonna play because they're trying to lose.
Yeah.
This handful of guys. Look, and I know Philly was banged up. Philly came in here and put a would you call it a G League team? I mean, they ran the G League team out on the court, and some of the guys, I think Maxey probably would have been able to play if there was something to play for, and so those situations just, you see where fans get really turned off by by what's going on because they're saying we're not seeing, not just the attempt to win, but we're not seeing good faith effort.
Mm-hmm. Look, we could really get in the weeds in this thing because. You throw on top of that, John, I mean, these teams that are actively trying to lose towards the end of the season are playing teams that are actively trying to win and improve their playoff positions.
Yes.
So you're giving these teams that are fighting for 5th or 4th or 2nd or 3rd, you're giving them free wins.
Yeah.
And that affects everybody else who they're playing against. So again, we could go all day on this.
I love what you guys are coming up on from this aspect. We all agree in this room, all 4 of us. And it's palpable. Yeah. It's visible. We can see whether...
Look, the league fined people because they know it's happening.
I said that during the regular season on one of the broadcasts, that if you get fined, you're done. You're automatically eliminated from being able to win it, right? I mean, if the league... For the league to fine you, they must feel you're egregiously or tanking or not putting in the best product, so you're done. So maybe we start with that. Hey, I fine you for specifically not competing... You have lost the shot. But to back up on your point, there's 3 instances that popped in my head that you were talking about where competing actually has helped the league. And in instances, you're a baseball guy, I'm a baseball guy. Adding those extra wild cards. How exciting is the final week? How many times in the last couple of seasons?
It's made September better.
Right.
Definitely.
We've seen those last weekends. We've had to play Monday, Tuesday games, right, to get to that wild card spot. In the NFL, adding that extra wild card spot, right? At first, I don't know what. Now it's 7 teams. And battling for that extra spot means a little bit. And as we said in the NBA, oh man, you already put in 8. We don't need 9 or 10. How exciting has the play-in been for that league? So that's 3 leagues, 3 instances where competing at the end for teams that aren't at the top. But it's that extra shot to get in makes it worthwhile. So maybe I like what we're seeing here. Maybe competition is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, by the way, Gus, you realize too if the NBA had instituted your rule about if you get fined, you get bumped out of the lottery, you don't get to participate. Derek Lively would not be a Dallas Maverick right now because the league actually the Mavericks I can't explain the wisdom, the lack of intelligence here. They basically publicly said we don't want to make the play-in. We're going to lose these games on the last weekend, and the league fined them. But because they lost those couple games 2 years ago, they ended up in the lottery. They picked, I think it was 11th or 12th. They ended up with Derek Lively. He was a huge component to them making the finals the next year. So I love that idea, though. I think if you're at the point where the league is fining you, you don't deserve to be participating.
Yeah, but I mean that's Graf mentioned that. I mean that's just so far in the weeds. That's so nuanced because if I'm saying we're holding the guy out because of his ankle, the league can't tell me his ankle don't hurt. Mm-hmm. If we're holding the guy out because of his back, the league can't tell me his back don't hurt.
I think you can if you do it only in cases though where there's a clear violation.
I mean
if
it's so egregious.
I think what Utah did was a clear violation of the rules that have been laid out, and then obviously Dallas admitted that they weren't following the policy. So I think if you just limit it to those, I think you avoid the league being in some dicey situations or some where it's kind of vague of whether they should step in or not. I think if you leave it to just the times where there's been a jury has ruled against you, I think then that's fine if we could just stick to that.
I love it. All right, final thing for you guys, 2012, 2019, the last 2 times and only 2 times the franchise has won the lottery. So Todd, we'll start with you, JD and Jim. Give me your most vivid memory of 2012, 2019.
I can't help you with 2012. That's too far back in the memory bank. I got a great 2019 story, if you can bear with me. So Gus did his talk show, for many, many years, and he was on the air all during that time when, of course, the Pelicans are going to win the lottery. They're going to get Zion Williamson. They're going to get, and I'm, listening to the show or being on the show, and all I'm doing is rolling my eyes day after day or texting him. I'm like, you're insane. The Pelicans will never win the lottery. They have no chance. You're wasting everybody's time. I mean, this was a daily thing. Hey, maybe Gus talked it into, he spoke it into existence. Anyway, let's go to lottery night. I'm with Tulane. I'm doing a baseball game that night. I'm broadcasting the game floor level. I actually was doing it next to the dugout. And lottery's going on, or it's about to start, and we're about in the 3rd inning. And it's about, 7-10? So, yeah, it's about the 3rd inning. And my phone just starts exploding. And I'm like, well, what's going on? And I'm looking, Pelicans win lottery. I'm getting all the notes. I'm like, no freaking way. And I'm on the air. I'm like, the Pelicans just won the lottery. I don't believe this. I can't. And this is during the baseball game. So I was just mind blown. All I could think about was Gus, who literally spoke it into existence.
There you go.
Day after day after day when I said there was no chance whatsoever. So that's my story.
Some other raw bad packs, by the way. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, I can't remember the exact words, but my memory is from 2019, and I'm pretty sure it was Alvin Gentry, who when they won it said blank yeah, which I thought was a huge miss marketing wise.
No doubt.
Just you print those T-shirts immediately.
No, they printed the T-shirt. My wife had one. They passed the T. Oh, they passed
dude,
those.
I didn't see one because I would have bought 5.
They passed those T-shirts out on draft night in the square.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Dude,
No.
Okay.
But
I did not see him.
The U in the first word had an asterisk.
Okay.
Dude,
Gotcha.
My wife had a shirt.
Look, I'd have done it, and I'd have stuck it on every seat in the arena for the opening. I mean, I was like, where is that shirt,
They passed it out.
and why don't we have them?
By the way, I've always said that the video of Alvin Gentry in that room that the NBA put out was a true test of people's character and what kind of person. If you look at the other executives in that room, there was a couple guys. I think the guy from Miami, his name is Andy Ellsberg. He gave Alvin a pat on the back. He congratulated him. He said, "Yeah, awesome, man." And then there's a couple other people that were nearby, including, I believe, a certain Lakers executive who had a very angry look on his face. There was no, it's not like Alvin could control winning it or not, but I just thought it was funny to see the different reactions of the people in the room. Some people were very gracious in congratulating him. Others were not so much. So, but my memory from 2019 actually was, so I was in Chicago for the lottery in the room when the Pelicans won it, and all the people that were there covering the team were looking at each other like, we can't believe that just happened, because they had, if you remember, they had the 7th pre-lottery slot, so they only had the 7th best chance to win the lottery, and then they ended up winning it. But one of the funny, vivid memories for me was, so I was in Chicago for the lottery and then there to cover the draft combine. And so the next day the draft combine started, and everyone who knew that I was there with the Pelicans or covering the Pelicans was tapping me on the back saying congratulations. And they were also like, I guess you can leave now, right? Because what's the point of you even being here for the draft combine? So I always thought that was funny that people, it made me feel good that people were happy for me, but also it was hilarious that people were just saying to me like, oh, you can just leave now. Like, what's the point of you even scouting? It's not like you don't know who they're going to pick. So there's my memory.
But by the way, and the timing is everything thing. Little did I know that about a month later, I would get the job here after we won the lottery. So
perfect.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome when you think about it.
As we close off here, let's 30 seconds or less. I feel different though, don't you? From 2012 to 19, or is it the same? And what I mean by that is, like, I look at 12 and 19. You're like, can we just get a player to sort of build? I look at this team, and maybe I don't know, it's wishful thinking, but we've done our podcast, Jim. And in player profiles, you guys have been a part of that here as well, our end of the season reviews. Unlike those seasons, this team has talent. Mm-hmm. It's just getting healthy. Right. I mean, am I wrong with that? Like, did you feel going into 2012 like they had talent and this would just help? And in 19, whereas here I'm like, whatever you get in the lottery is going to help what I believe is a team with talent. Does that make sense? I feel different.
I mean, I thought we had talent in 2019, personally. Mm-hmm. I thought we had enough players to win. I mean, what really nobody could have foreseen was Zion got hurt in the 5th game of the preseason, and we really never recovered, if you think about it, because he was supposed to really be the missing piece that was going to bring it all together. You had Lonzo Ball, you had Drew Holiday, you had Brandon Ingram. He would have been another. I mean, we saw how well that team was playing towards the end, and then COVID hit. I mean, they were playing their best basketball because they had all their pieces. Mm-hmm. So now 2012 was a different story altogether. I mean, that was just a bad team, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean,
I just thought 2019 was a little bit different. But no, I mean, I'm with you, Gus, because I mean, you're getting all these guys back next year. It's almost like winning the lottery. You're getting Trey Murphy back. You're getting Herb Jones back. You're getting these pieces that you did not have most of the season.
I think to Gus's point that I would characterize each of those 3 situations, including with this year being the 3rd one, as different in that 2012, I think you needed a franchise savior, needed somebody to, and a lot of teams that were in the lottery that year looked at it like, we got to we got to get the number 1 pick because the drop off after Anthony Davis is huge, and we need somebody who's going to come in and just change everything. But then 2019 to me wasn't necessarily that you needed a savior as much as you needed that huge jolt of positivity after what we went through with the Anthony Davis situation during the 18-19 season. This year is different because you don't need a savior, you don't need talent. To me, this is more of a supplement to what you already have. So I do think that this year is different compared to those previous 2 times when they won it, just because of the circumstances around the team or roster are different.
Yeah, I feel no sense of desperation. As you mentioned, supplemental pieces. I mean, the Pels might pick somebody who isn't necessarily a sexy pick for the fan base, but might be a good player for them. But you also can pick a guy who won't immediately be in the rotation. This team, if everybody is healthy. Y'all hear me? I'm knocking wood. If everybody is healthy, this is a fairly deep team. Mm-hmm. So you bring in a guy, one, you don't have to rush him. Two, he doesn't have to have that kind of pressure on him to step out there and be a leader of the team immediately. And you can ease him in while, hopefully, this team is winning games during the process. So it feels a lot different from that standpoint to where, I say I want to see this team get a point. But even then, a rookie point going to a somewhat veteran team, there's a learning curve. There's growing pains that go along with it. I don't care how talented you are. There are growing pains that go along with it. So, and yet still I want one just because, I know that's the position that I think the Pels need the most just because of DeJounte Murray. But again, I don't feel a sense of, just desperation that like, man, if you don't get Cooper Flagg, what's going to happen?
Right.
Well, if you don't get Cooper Flagg, okay, but you can make do with, player X or player Y or player Z and be fairly satisfied with him.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. That was fun, guys, being able to discuss it a little bit. And what's really fun is it really looks like at least round 2 of the NBA playoffs is off and running and has had some really good games this week. So let's see what takes place. We'll catch up again here as we get closer to, Jim, the regular draft, which will come up in the final week of June. And then we're off and running into the offseason, free agency and such. So always fun when we get a chance to catch up. Mr. John DeShazier, analyst for the Pelicans Radio Network, and the Pels voice on the radio, Mr. Todd Graffagnini. Thank you for that backpack, by the way.
You're welcome. And thank you, Gus.
And thank you, Jim. I didn't forget about you here as well.
Of course.
Thank you, as always, for tuning us in. You've been listening to a special edition of the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans podcast.